Here's the track that I'm going to deconstruct for you. The reason why your drum groove right now isn't sounding the way you want it to is because you're just not spending enough time on it. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through how to create high fidelity drum grooves. So let's dive into the video. In 99.99% of my tracks, I start off with the kick drum. In this case, it's a kick drum from my Lotus Legacy Kicks pack. It originally sounded like this, but had a bit of a sub tail to it. And since I had such a dominant sub groove in this track, they were starting to conflict each other, and in that case I want to keep my kick very tight, as I did here, and I use the one-shot fade-out mode. Alternatively, you can also basically do the same with the classic mode, but I just chose to use the one-shot mode for the sake of visual representation. Then I start layering some groove textures, and I started off with this one here. I like adding these like little, almost like you can't hear them type textures to your tracks. Like a top texture, then a dark texture. Like more of an underground type vibe. And this one has some auto pan for some extra rhythm. And there's also a little percussion clank in the background. It's just those small, tiny things that really add up to your groove. Then there's a shaker. The tight and groovy shaker with a bit of like bird sounds in the background or something like that. Pretty tight though. Like a ticka 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 ticka. Then we have a rather loose one. Like there's not even a consistent groove to it, it's just loose. Then there's this birdies and shizzle channel, which originally sounded like this. Nature sounds. That's it. Just added a highly resonant EQ here. I like when those highs are rolled off when it comes to organic texture sounds like these. I want to make them feel subtle and more background-ish rather than be in your face. And to make it a bit more weird, I added a grain delay. You can see you can set the spray on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, you can set the frequency. By default, I think it's set to pitch. Yeah, the spray does some really weird stuff. Decided to keep it in there because it felt really in tune with the rest of the drum groove. Then I added another shaker, which might be a bit too much, but hey, why not? Yeah, this one's from the Daydream Organic House pack. Even though the shakers sound similar to each other, each one's fulfilling a different purpose. For example, this shaker has a bit of a unique groove to it in between. Like there's those small offbeat grooves which just make it so intricate. And then there's this loose percussion here. It's also from Daydreamer. And there's this, which I really love, this glass sound that plays every 2 bars. If I were to mute the LFO tool that I have here, it would just sound too dominant. I remember pitching it down. It was originally just like a glass shaker or something like that, and I pitched it down to make it sound a bit more weird. Rolled off some of the high ends, I don't know why, and I added an LFO tool with a rate of 2 bars to make it fade in every 2 bars. So it just adds a bit of variety to the groove. Awesome. And I think there's another way to do this. You can add auto pan, set the rate to 2 bars, crank up the amount, and then change the shape. And it does a similar type of effect. You see? So you don't necessarily need to use LFO tool. You can also do this with auto pan. But I just like LFO tool because it gives me a direct visual representation of the sound. Yeah, and then I have this really meticulous sub groove. And as far as I remember, I created this one using one of my Diva patches, and I just rendered that to audio. And once I rendered it to audio, I have full control over the fade times. As you can see here, I use these subgrooves. You can also use toms and add a pretty severe high cut like this, so you emphasize only the sub frequencies, and set fades, individual fades. And you can see every sub hit is different. Let's play that. And I love these subgrooves with a kick. Combine that with the shakers and the tops. That just sounds so freaking dope. And the last element to our groove is this Cabasa, I think it's called. It's like a tribal drum. Added a bit of EQing to take out some of that low end rumble as well as that mid-range mud. Rolled off some of the high frequencies, make it feel a bit more towards the back, and added an echo. All this does is add an 1/8 note delay to both channels, 30% dry wet, 70% feedback. Makes it bounce out. One of my personal favorite elements of the entire groove is this pad over here. Without it, it's just a normal drum groove. But with it, it's like heaven. And if you want to create sounds that are similar to these, you could use any synthesizer. I find that Omnisphere and Diva really work well for these types of sounds. I find this Lush Desert Pad to be quite cool. You can play chords as well. And once you add a lot of reverb and delay to your chords, to this types of sound, it tends to become very luscious and paddy. I don't even know if that's a word, luscious. All right, just leave it there. This Echo Boy Jr. set to these settings, 1/8 delay, and the feedback to like a really high amount. I set it to ambient mode. You could use any other delay. Color copy works really well with these types of sounds, and you can also use Ableton stock echo on a high feedback setting. But yeah, I chose Echo Boy Jr. because it sounds more like me. Oh, lovely, man. Just a lot of intricate details to this groove. Oh, and I almost forgot. Up here, I also have a shaker that is basically playing the default hi-hat rhythms. Every second 1/8 note is a shaker. So if I play that together with the kick, you'll hear that. You can also play around with your start time to create a bit of a different groove. And then we have these two claps as audio layers because I like to have full control of my claps. You can see that one is set tightly to the grid over here. Well, kind of tight, I guess. And this one's pre-shifted a bit. If you pre-shift your claps, they tend to sound very like sweepish, like if you know what I mean. And then there's these claps that sound like really tight, like a stick sound. You can see I boosted some of those frequencies to make it feel a bit more resonant. Combine that with this one. Without these claps, it sounds completely different. Layering claps, man. Layering claps is just makes a huge difference. And you can see I also added a glue compressor, like on a really, really tight setting here to reduce the transients of the claps a bit because those just punch into your limiter like crazy. Whatever this glue compressor does is barely even noticeable, but it does make a huge difference in the mastering fades. And last but very not least, something that I really love to do to give my tracks a whole different level of depth is add a psychedelic element. And I'm not speaking of that psytrance type stuff. I'm speaking of something that you just usually wouldn't put inside your tracks, like a vintage movie vocal or something like that.
They tell you to find purpose in life. It's a funny one. I do believe we are destined for great things. What do I know?
Dude, if you have your eyes closed on the dance floor, if you're listening to a track like this, takes you away. And I added a bit of echo on dotted 1/8 note with a bit of feedback, again, just to give it a bit more rhythm.
They tell you to find purpose in life. It's funny. I do believe we are destined for great things.
With a kick for a bar and back in. And on the master channel, I just have this random saturator that's just making it a bit louder, emphasizing the harmonics a bit more and just making it feel more glued together. That's usually what saturators do. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. It does help me grow and it helps me provide you more content like this. If you like this project file, you can head over to Patreon and grab it there. I post project files every now and then there. See you in the next video. Peace.
How you define purpose in life?
I wish I would.